Lisa. I have a 3-photo page today, and I want to use a large tree image for this because that's really what this is all about, is planting a tree. The title is going to be Fruit Tree and a question mark, and I'll explain the question mark as we go along because that's really the story behind this. This tree image, I've got lots of things I could do. I could do die cuts, I have other stamps. There's a lot of different ways I could do trees because I love trees and leaves, so I kind of collected some things. I have some small trees I could use, but I wanted a large image, and I have this one that I got at Hobby Lobby from Stampabilities, and it's just a beautiful design, and I want to see if I can get this fitted in. Let's see, I have some ivory background paper, which means I'm probably going to be trimming the white off these photos. I picked ivory because the papers that I picked for this are an older collection, Time of Spring from Fancy Pants. I bought this and then never could find a use for it much. I guess I did a little bit with it since I've trimmed the papers up. And then I sort of put it in my to get rid of pack, and this morning I was going through papers and couldn't find anything quite right, and I started going through that, and these are just the perfect colors and just the right shades. They're not so dark and all for a spring themed page. So I'm going to try to put this in here, and I chose the ivory background because that's what matched the paper. So I'm looking to do that kind of thing, and that's what I have here on my sketch. 3 photos. I'm going to do another flower over here, and I want most of these papers to go sort of towards the bottom. So if I put this in here and I trim these down, I think you'll see most of the tree. I'm going to stamp and emboss this, and then we're probably going to do some mists around it. I have my little mist sampler out here so we can pick out some mists. Also, for lettering, I have some more of my raw chipboard that I think we can work in. So that's the things we're going to do with the page, try to use some older product and do a fairly fast page today. I trimmed off the white edges on all of the photos, so they're now 3 by 5s. And we're going to go ahead and take the tree, and I'm going to use the something that I have for this stamp because it's too large for my regular stamp block. So I have this old plexiglass piece that I used for a cake stand one time, and the stamp will work on that. That's probably one of the reasons I should not have bought this stamp, is I don't have a stamp press. If I had a stamp press, I'd have something large enough, but I don't, so I have to use this. And it does work. And now we're getting the brown embossing powder. This is Early Espresso by Stampin' Up. And I'll heat that up. I could have used just regular brown ink because it's going to show through the misting, but I thought it would look nicer if it were embossed. And going through the different papers, I have some choices here for inks, probably some blues and greens and yellow, and I'll save the pink for another area of the page. In my misting box, we're going to start with, I've got Sky, and I've got a real deep yellow from Studio Calico, and I'm going to do these one at a time with the Sky first and do some heat setting so maybe the colors won't blend quite so much. If you put these yellow and blue on there together wet, they're going to turn to green. So I'm going to go ahead and just heat set those. I don't want a ton of yellow up there. My first effort with that green, I hadn't sprayed that green mist in a while and it was really clogged up. So I've got that opened, and that is an old Tattered Angels color, I think called Green Clover. I've had a long time and the bottle kind of clogged, so I have it on a different kind of bottle. I felt like I needed a little bit more blue color, and I had one, an old one, again from Tattered Angels, but it's really worn out, and I just had to give up on that and use a homemade mist of Baja Breeze ink from Stampin' Up and water. That's the most success I've ever had with homemade mist, is that particular one. It just works really well. I don't know why it does more than the others, but trying to get some of the extra mist off the embossed area. And I had a little bit that's really, really stuck there to the middle, and I'm just going to have to kind of leave it because it's not, I'm afraid I'll tear the paper if I keep messing with it. So figuring out which papers I'm going to go across. One of those papers, that one that looks like a quilt design, it does not go all the way across. So what I'm going to have to do is probably some piecing underneath the photo to make that work. So I measure my sketch. My sketches are always 6 inches by 6 inches, so I just take any element on the sketch and double it. My sketchbooks are the same way. If you print them out, you just take any element on the page, double it to see how large it is or where it needs to go. So I know how big to cut the different pieces of paper here. Also, the sketchbooks have some measurements in them too, so you don't have to necessarily measure everything, but it's a nice fallback. Now, I'm using some of these old chipboard letters, and this one is really, I don't have much left. In fact, I end up sort of breaking it down after this, after doing this word. I'm doing fruit tree, and I had to take a K and turn it into an R, and snip off a little of an X to make an I, and yeah, so you see I don't have much left here, but I want to get maybe one more word out of these before I break them down and put them in my box with individual sections for different letters of the alphabet. And then the tree is going to be these pink letters where I have quite a few. And I want to add some question marks. Now the reason for these question marks is my husband has planted fruit trees here for 20 years, but we've never had any fruit. There's always, sometimes it's weather. Peach trees in particular in this area, there are people who try to farm peaches here, and about every other year they lose their crops because we're just a little too far north. And my husband's had similar luck. One year he had squirrels got all his peaches. That really irritated him. So it's been one thing after another. Normally apples, we are the apple county. Apples grow beautifully here, but we haven't had success with apple trees on our property either. So I think that, I don't know whether we'll end up with any fruit out of this plum tree or not, but he wanted it, and it was kind of a milestone too that he was able to get out and do some gardening after having surgeries and some challenges this spring, getting over some issues, some medical issues. So he's doing much better, and this was one of the first things he got to do out in the yard, and of course I helped him a lot, so he didn't have to do tons of it, but it was a nice morning out there getting the fruit tree planted, and maybe someday we'll get some fruit. Now that little flower is from a baggie of odds and end things, and I was looking through my drawer and I found it and thought, oh, I can use this last flower. I also went and looked for some stickers because I needed something there where that tree kind of came with the photos couldn't quite completely overlap, so I found a sticker to put in there. And the only thing I have left on my sketch is some stitching. And you can see my DMC embroidery floss, that's half of it. I used to do a lot of embroidery back in the 80s. I think I started maybe I did start in the 70s. So my embroidery floss goes back a really long way, and I'm glad I don't do embroidery anymore. My hands just can't take that kind of repetitive action, so I don't do that anymore. But I'm glad the floss has found a new home here in the scrap room because I do occasionally use it on cards and pages. This is a paper piecing mat and tool from Stampin' Up. They have a couple of different ones of these, I think, and I'm using this one because it's just a little bit larger and spreading out my holes so that I'll have really big stitches. And I did have to make one under that F and sort of force the floss to come out where I needed it to. So let's take a look at our sketch. We've got our 3 photos with the tree in the middle, and I did end up, since I didn't overlap the photos, I just put a sticker there in the middle, and we've got our flower. I didn't really have room for these words here because my title came out a little bit longer. I was just going to use some stickers or something there, but I put one up there, so that kind of works for that. A little bit of stitching going along here with some of that embroidery floss. I think the misting on the background really goes well with this, with some yellows and blues and green mist there, and then kind of kept the pink a little bit more towards the bottom of the page. But we got some nice spring colors and a little story to share in my album. So thank you so much for joining me. You'll find the sketch over on my blog, and if you like the video, I always love to get a thumbs up, and I hope if you're not already a subscriber that you will subscribe. Thanks so much.